Imagine standing on a threshold, but the door is invisible. You feel the cool air of freedom on one side and the heavy, humid silence of obligation on the other. This is the truth of the most dangerous kind of control, the kind you never recognize while it's happening. It's not a prison with steel bars. It's a beautifully crafted psychological cage woven from your own heartstrings. And right now, we're going to step into the light and see the wires clearly for the very first time. Before we dive into the secrets of semen retention power, make sure you subscribe now and join our Telegram family. The link's in the description. Don't miss the exclusive insights and daily motivation that will keep your energy, focus, and discipline unstoppable. Your success journey starts today. The whisper of emotional manipulation is far more lethal than the shout of anger. It doesn't arrive in a flash of noise or a moment of obvious conflict. No, it slips into your life like the softest shadow, a phantom twin that learns your exact shape, memorizes your most cherished hopes, catalogs your deepest fears, and then, with devastating precision, uses them as leverage against your very soul. This control doesn't announce itself with waving red flags. It arrives dressed in the gentle warmth of acceptance, the soothing promise of safety, and the intoxicating illusion of being finally, truly chosen. It pulls you in close, mirroring your unspoken needs, your secret dreams, and that ancient, aching human longing to be seen and validated. This is the setup, the masterful overture before the main act. And before the victim realizes what quiet surgery is underway, this influence begins its work shaping decisions, sculpting reactions, subtly rewriting the script of who they believe they are. One minuscule, seemingly insignificant moment at a time, the world outside may be loud and chaotic, but the internal war being fought is silent, devastating, and deeply personal. Perhaps, at this very moment, you are sitting alone, the faint glow of a screen illuminating a face that holds a truth too heavy to admit. Your fingers hover over messages, reread countless times. A flash of adoration followed by hours of cold absence. A sweet compliment neutralized by a cruel remark disguised as just being honest. You have learned the painful choreography of apologizing for things you never did, of shrinking your light so the storm clouds won't gather overhead. You look in the mirror and wonder, how did I become this careful, hesitant, perpetually second-guessing version of myself? How did the vibrant me I remember get exiled? This is the central, heartbreaking power of subtle manipulation. It doesn't need to break you in half. It only needs to bend you slowly, meticulously, until you forget the shape you were originally meant to hold. Tonight, the silence in your room might feel heavier than the loudest argument, because the quiet reveals the depth of the change. You scroll back, searching for the precise point of fracture, the moment everything shifted. But the truth is, control arrives as a continuous, repeating pattern, expertly disguised as deep, complex care to places emotional consistency with calculated unpredictability. One day, you are adored, placed on a pedestal. The next, you are chillingly abandoned, left to question your own worth. 1 hour, you feel deeply understood, seen to your core. The next, you are made to feel utterly invisible, a burden, and each jarring shift pulls you deeper, an emotional gravity that keeps you off balance. This is the mechanism by which manipulation takes root, not by brute force, but by the shattering power of contrast. When a source of warmth is suddenly and arbitrarily withheld, your brain develops a profound, primal addiction to retrieving it. You find yourself trying harder, giving more, explaining your existence more thoroughly, desperately hoping they will return to that ideal, loving version of themselves they presented at the beginning. We must realize that original presentation was not the truth of love, it was the setup. It was the silent, strategic beginning of a psychological loop, specifically designed to make you endlessly pursue the very person who is inflicting the pain. There is a quiet, internal moment when genuine, protective doubt is weaponized against you. A simple, dismissive phrase, "You're overreacting" or "You're imagining things," becomes the insidious tool that begins to rewrite the concrete reality of your own experience. The manipulator doesn't need to convince you that you are wrong about everything. They only need you to question your own perception once, then twice, until eventually, you doubt yourself every single time something feels deeply, fundamentally wrong. The moment you begin to trust their interpretation of reality more than your own innate sovereign instincts, they have gained the profound soul-deep control they were always silently reaching for. In that dim room, the individual wipes away a tear, not shed for what was said, but for what they have become. They are weeping for the self that now waits for permission to feel, the self that constantly walks on psychological eggshells without knowing the reason why. They are crying for the spirit that apologizes to preempt abandonment. They don't call this ordeal psychological control. They call it love. They label it compromise. They rationalize it as loyalty. But deep inside, a tiny, resilient voice, one they have been relentlessly silencing, is whispering that the entire foundation is corrupt. This is the voice of the original self, the part that remembers the joy and confidence that existed before the erosion began. Love is not meant to feel like navigating a dense, treacherous fog with your hands bound behind your back. Love is not meant to make you afraid of the intensity of your own honest emotions. Love is never supposed to force you to question your own memories, your own sanity, just for the fragile, temporary comfort of keeping someone near. Yet, this is the functional mechanism of control. It systematically rewrites your internal narrative. It replaces the certainty of self-trust with a deep, paralyzing confusion. It turns your sacred, intuitive heart into a complex maze that someone else strategically designed. The most tragic part is that you don't fully comprehend the enclosure until you are already utterly lost within its walls. This silent emotional war is waged daily by countless individuals. They smile convincingly at work, presenting a facade of normalcy, yet they return home to complete emotional exhaustion, depleted and hollowed out. They laugh with friends, skillfully hiding the raw, agonizing truth of the emotional endurance tests they face nightly. They convince themselves that this crushing dynamic is normal because the manipulation was never loud enough to trigger alarms. It was only ever a whisper, a recurring pattern, a fractional shift, a slow, patient, emotional undoing. But now, the first vital crack of awareness is emerging. The mind is brave enough to whisper, something is wrong, even if the heart is still clinging to the old, painful hope. Once this profound awareness begins to grow, the unraveling of that suffocating control is not only possible but inevitable. The truth, like water, always finds its way to the surface, even in the quietest, most guarded of rooms. The truth about the person seeking control is that their action rarely springs from a place of genuine, authentic strength. It originates from a place of profound fear. It is the fear of losing their power, the fear of being truly abandoned, the paralyzing fear of having to face their own internal emptiness and lack of self-worth. And when someone carries that level of unacknowledged fear, they weaponize it in the most subtle, nuanced ways, transforming the beauty of human relationship into a relentless game of quiet, psychological domination. The individual in the apartment sits, heartbeat steady yet heavy with realization, understanding now that every flicker of clarity, every moment of discomfort they chose to ignore, was actually their deepest self, trying desperately to protect them. They recalled the beginning, the gentleness, the beautiful ease of trusting someone who seemed so profoundly understanding. That hopeful, open version of themselves now feels like a stranger, a ghost from a past life. This is the ultimate theft of emotional manipulation. It completely reshapes your internal world until the authentic self you once knew becomes an unrecognizable figure. They remember the first time they felt that sickening internal twist. It wasn't an argument, but a small, barbed comment delivered with a disarming smile. Something that twisted their gut before they rationalized it away as nothing. That is how the foundation was laid. One uncomfortable moment immediately followed by crushing self-doubt, then another, then another. Over time, these moments stack like invisible, reinforcing bricks. They built a cage that felt like home because it was constructed so gradually, so carefully, that the victim never realized they were being enclosed until the roof was sealed. It is critical to remember that people who manipulate do not always consciously comprehend the full scope of the harm they inflict. Some do it instinctively, repeating toxic, broken patterns learned from their own painful pasts. But others do it with chilling intentionality, because controlling another person is the only way they feel genuinely secure, powerful, or stable. They pull the invisible strings quietly, like a puppeteer, determined that the puppet should never suspect it is being moved by an external hand. They will praise you when it serves their needs. They will punish you with silence or criticism when you dare to assert your boundaries. They keep you perpetually unsure, perpetually off balance, so you never feel steady enough to challenge the profound imbalance of power. They confuse you so deeply that their temporary, conditional approval becomes the ultimate prize you chase, even when the pursuit is actively and visibly hurting your spirit. The person recalls the endless, hollow apologies they offered, not knowing what they were apologizing for. The arguments where they somehow ended up comforting the very person who initiated the pain. The nights spent awake, replaying conversations like a forensic scientist, trying to figure out how things escalated so swiftly, never realizing that the confusion itself was a deliberate component of the design. Manipulators know this secret. If they can keep you perpetually searching for clarity, you will never have the mental space or energy to notice the truth of their actions. The chaos originates entirely from them, not from you. The emotional push and pull becomes a desperate, addictive cycle. The temporary relief after conflict is tragically mistaken for making up or love. The moment they finally offer a kind word feels like definitive proof that they still care. But this is not care. It is a calculated reinforcement. It is precise psychological conditioning. If someone intentionally starves you emotionally, only to feed you again when they need control, your very being is trained to treat survival as living. You cling to the smallest crumbs of affection because your mind has been trained to process these emotional fragments as full, nourishing meals. This is why trauma bonds possess such powerful, magnetic force. They are not built on the bedrock of mutual love. They are constructed entirely on fear and hope, twisted together until the individual cannot discern one from the other. You begin to believe that the person causing the deep, sustained pain is also the only source capable of granting you relief. You stay because you falsely believe the good moments are worth the agonizing suffering. You fail to see that the suffering is maintained solely to make those brief, good moments feel incredibly rare, valuable, and desperately necessary for survival. The Great Awakening happens not when the abuser changes, but when the victim stops clinging to the false hope that they will. You realize the power they held over your mind was never inherently real. It was borrowed. Borrowed from your childhood wounds, borrowed from your anxieties, borrowed from the parts of you that doubted your own immeasurable worth. But once you begin the fierce, life-or-mean process of reclaiming those essential parts of yourself, the entire, fragile illusion dissolves into thin air. You realize the profound, liberating truth. You are not impossible to love. You are not too sensitive or crazy. You are not overreacting. You were simply manipulated by a person who fatally mistook your beautiful, generous empathy for deep, exploitable weakness. If this video gave you real value, tap the thanks button. Your support helps me keep creating deeper content like this. Every thanks is a spark that keeps this mission alive. Your support means more than you know. Now, you must rise. Not loudly, not dramatically, but steadily, persistently. The way that dawn inevitably replaces the oppressive night. You begin to build yourself again, piece by painstaking piece. You seek out those who make you feel unconditionally safe. You rest without guilt. You rediscover the hobbies, the passions, the small, quiet joys that once felt impossibly out of reach. You learn, perhaps for the first time, what true connection feels like. Quiet, consistent, and deeply respectful.